Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. We have a special event for you guys signed up tonight. With us, we have Stephen Yogi, we have Don Kramer, Justin Adams, Jen Walden, and Solange. Solange, how do you pronounce your last name? I'm sorry.
Fanif.
Fanif. And hopefully we'll be joined. Fanif. And hopefully we'll also be joined by Brixbury, who's a full-time Twitch streamer as well. So without further ado, let's get on with it. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
So this stream is all about marketing strategies for artists. So with that in mind, let's dive in. Who wants to kind of kick it off a little bit with that? Cool.
Well, I think Don seems pretty excited to get this rolling. So let's hear about Don.
Okay, so
Why don't you introduce yourself first?
yeah, that's what I was going to go ahead and do. So I have spent the past roughly, prior to entering the publishing industry, I'm the director of sales and marketing for Pandamoon Publishing. It's a local indie pub in Austin, Texas. And prior to that, I spent about 10 years in the video game sector working on marketing for video games. Running companies, freelance houses, etc., so on and so forth. What I specialize in, though, the most is brand identity, is your story. What is your story about you? And so what I'm going to be bringing to the table tonight is helping people start the conversation internally with themselves to understand who they are from a marketing perspective, how people perceive them outwardly, how they perceive themselves inwardly, and whether or not those two ideas mirror each other and how to make those ideas mirror each other. And then once you understand how you're perceived, how to manipulate that in a positive light and utilize your fails and your successes as nothing but success. So that's my goal for today.
Awesome.
Cool.
And Yogi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Stephen Yogi Roof. I'm a chair of the Entrepreneurial Studies Department at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. And I agree with what Don was talking about, that knowing yourself and aligning your external and your internal identities is really essential to communicating who you are and what you do in the best and the most efficient way.
Cool.
Awesome.
And so yeah, as I mentioned, we have Justin Adams, who's hi, wave Justin, wave to the pretty people. Justin is one of the co-admins at the Anvil, and also with us is Jen Walden in the lower left-hand corner with the shiny headphones. Jen. And
The Tron
Solange is also
headphones.
here, but for some reason we can't get her.
The
Tron headphones.
for some reason.
That's okay. Yeah, and everyone else here is an artist. I'm also one of the co-admins of the Anvil group. My Twitch channel has recently been updated with information about the Anvil. Justin's Twitch channel has been updated as well. Solange is updating hers as well. So you guys will get to know what all that is. So with everything that you guys just said, Yogi and Don specifically, what would you guys say is the difference between marketing yourself and marketing your art? Is there a difference? Who wants to dive in?
I guess I can go first. There is a difference. Because first and foremost, like, let me give you an example for books. When we run our publishing company at Pandamoon, we think of people as the investment, not the book necessarily. That's why we try to get people who are authors that are prolific, so they're able to pump out a lot of different books in a series and or write multiple series. The idea is you invest in the person first and foremost, because that person is going to last, X amount of years. Whereas the book has a bell curve, a cycle unto which it's going to be the most profitable at a certain point, unless you bump it with movies and other things of that nature. So you need to spend more time marketing yourself, focusing on who you are, so that you can build that community that's centered around you. And that's one of the main things that I'm going to focus on tonight, is helping you understand the community that surrounds your brand. And so my biggest thing that I want people to take away is how to pull those people to themselves by using the art as a vehicle to who you are. That art is an extension of you. It's a reflection of who you are on the inside, and that art is the brand visually of who you are internally, if that makes sense. So they work hand in hand, but they are two separate things. And so I'll hand it off.
Yeah, I guess the language that I use, probably getting to the same thing, but the language I use is asking people to really get clear on what their purpose is. What change do they want to see or affect? What impact do they want to make in the world? And getting super clear about that. And that means talking to a lot of people. And sometimes for people, that, especially artists, it can be very difficult. And especially because we like to talk about ourselves through our work. And sometimes underneath that, we start to uncover and identify what our values are, what's important to us. And so that can translate into marketing to, the terms like brand values and things like that. But as an individual, it's really about what do you stand for, what won't you stand for, and really simple things like that. And just getting super clear about who you are and what change you want to make in the world.
Awesome. So I think that.
Yeah, and I think that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you, Justin.
Oh, I was just gonna say that. I think that, like, at the core of that, I think a lot of artists sort of skip over that part where they don't know. Like they know their art very well, but they don't know themselves very well, and not really ever sit down and write down what your values are. I mean, and if maybe ask certain questions, the person might be able to figure that out. But I remember reading a post by an oil painter that I follow, and he went through this whole huge thing to figure out what his core values are and how to then use that to approach the world. And so I followed his method, and answering these questions was quite difficult. It took about 2 days, and it was extremely beneficial for me, just because I never really directly thought about what it is that I find absolutely important to me in my life, and it really settled in what I wanted to do with my art. So I think at the core of marketing yourself and your art and branding is one needs to know who they are, what they stand for, first and foremost.
Could I add to that, Justin,
Yeah,
real
please.
quick?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Anytime.
The term so I have a friend of mine, Jay. He worked in California in the political sector very heavily, and he worked with politicians. And one of the things that he did is, first and foremost, he found out what is referred to as the story. And I say that in quotation simply because it's an abstract concept and an idea, but really what it comes down to is exactly what you just described. You have to figure out what your core values are. You have to think about your life, how you've led it, and really ask yourself, who are you? What is the story that is you? What is the story that the world sees about you? And how do they connect with each other? And are you brave enough to tell the real story that's really who you are? And as an artist, we have this unique opportunity that most people don't. And if you're an author, if you are a drawer, if you are a painter, any of that, you have that opportunity to show the world what your story is visually, because with writing, it's just hallucinating concepts in your mind as you read them. With painting, you're visually seeing that the depiction of who you are. You're showing your spirit, your mind and your focus, and you're telling your story through every single piece. And that's the core of branding is the story. And it's one of the single most difficult things to figure out is who you are. And I agree very strongly with both what y'all have said so far on that.
Yeah, just to dovetail on that, I mean, this is a really great topic, and I find working with undergraduates in our program, I think sometimes artists, the way I see what artists often do is they see and experience the world in a unique way, and they have they see and experience the world in the way that a lot of the people in their community see and experience it. And then they have these unique skills that they've developed and honed and refined in order to communicate what it is that they're experiencing internally. So that's kind of what Don was talking about. And in doing so, there are these special heightened skills that other people might see it or feel it, but we're able to communicate it in this very unique way, both visually and almost metaphorically, whether it's in words or pictures or images or time-based media or whatever. And with young artists, especially the ones I work with as undergraduates, they're sometimes hesitant to lay claim to a who am I? What is my lived experience? And what am I experiencing right now? And I think that all people, and including artists, we evolve and change and have, we're a summation of what we've gone through. And I think it's okay to be brave. That's what I'd like artists to do, is just to own where they're at right now and accept that it might or likely will change over time. And so just to be at peace with that and yet still be brave enough to own where you are right now. And you're the people that think, feel, or experience the world in the ways that you're representing the world are going to be drawn to you. The more authentic and the more clear about what you're liking or not liking about what's going on in the world around you, and the more clearly you can manifest that through your work, then the more that those people are going to be attracted to you and your work. And so aligning, just as Don said initially, aligning that what you feel inside with how your work is expressing how you feel is really critical. And then, yes, it gets into all that jargony language about brand and brand identity and brand values and all that kind of stuff. But really, I think if you can just, try to find the language to own and express who you are and what you're experiencing right now, and what change you'd like to see the world to take place in the world, and then manifest that through your work, is really going to get you a long way to drawing an audience or customers, if you will, to you and to the work that you're producing.
Those are some really great
All right, so I've got a question based off that. So let's say you've got a young artist, and you pose them with that question, and they say, well, I just like to make pretty pictures. I just like to paint cool stuff. I'm really moved by painting giant mechs slaying dragons. And like so. How do you get someone to go from I guess they're more like internal hermit-like artist experience, where they're just enjoying their own private practice, I guess, to that stage of being brave? What's the gap? So I guess maybe we can talk a little bit about tactics of being less of a hermit, because that's like a huge artist problem, especially with
drawing people out of their shell.
Yeah,
right. Social media and marketing, sure. And like it's like the antithesis of what it is to be a successful artist. It's very hard to be successful if you're too withdrawn.
And definitely in line with that, one of the observations. Oh, sorry, Don, hang on. And this is something we can talk about in a little bit later in the stream, but is artists at conventions, right? Like people who are very much in their shell in a convention. You know the artists I'm talking about, where you walk by their booth and they're just kind of like withdrawn. They're a bit shy. They're not engaging. They're not really communicating, making eye contact, anything like that. And their artwork might be good, but they're so withdrawn that you're not taken to approach them and start talking to them, because you almost feel like you're stepping on their space. And I think maybe that's relevant to this particular conversation as well. What you're saying, Justin, is that whole being a hermit. Like, at which point is it detrimental to you being a successful artist? And how do you use it? How do you get out of it? Yeah, please, Don.
Okay, so believe it or not, some of the people who are listening in know me, and I may seem like a big, huge extrovert. In all my social media, how I present myself. it's actually very taxing on me. It's taken me, 15 years to actually be willing to go out and do these things. But one of the things that I found is unique about today, that is different than 10 years ago, that is different than 10 years before, is social media gives everybody a voice, no matter how introverted you may be, no matter how shy you may be. You can use social media in a way that people in the 80s as artists only wish they could have used. Whenever they were trying to promote themselves and actually interact with individuals. How do you convince somebody to come out of their shells and who they are? Well, that's actually the community. That's all of us. That is our responsibility as artists together, as a macro, not just as a micro. It's to encourage each other to be able to come out, to invite each other to these sketch groups, to be able to invite each other to these events, online, offline, wherever it may be, to build coalitions like the Anvil. That's why I do what I do, to help other artists come out of their shell like I came out of mine. Because once people start to come out, the more the culture happens in the world, the more change we have, the more we affect things. And I think on micro, ultra micro, and then all the way up to super macro, meaning global. And if you want to affect change, then you yourself have to start affecting change by helping encourage people to come out, and by being warm, by being compassionate, by understanding that artist may in fact be an amazing artist, but maybe they just need somebody to sit down and talk with them at the booth, and then suddenly they'll start turning around, and then the next convention that they come around, they're a little bit less shy, they're a little bit less closed in, holding on, they're a little bit less than that, and they keep building and keep building. So I think it's on us as artists as a whole to help other artists come find what we've already found.
Absolutely.
We have that
one
responsibility.
tactic is external.
What's that, Justin?
Go ahead, Phil.
Oh,
I was just saying,
that
so one tactic is external.
Yeah, one of the things that's really cool, and I've been doing conventions now for about 10 years, is when you see those people blossom and become, figures in that community. Even whether it's a particular show or the networks that attend those shows. I do have a couple of questions here from the chat. One of them that is very relevant to where we're at currently. Deus Nocte asks, when marketing on social media, should you have separate accounts for your product and yourself, or is it better to consolidate it under one to make it yourself more personable? Don's laughing.
Sorry.
It really depends on what you're planning to do with that. If you have, let's take Facebook. You might want to have a personal account and one for your heart, so you don't mix up the two, and you can post more personal stuff on one account and more professional stuff on the other one. I'm going to let John finish that.
Okay. So I'm going to give you two extremes. One extreme is me, and the other extreme is exactly what she just suggested. So typically people don't find middle ground whenever they're trying to figure out, should I have a product and a personal account. It's usually either they have it completely compartmentalized and separate, or they just say, screw it, we're going to go all in. I'm the kind of person who I use Facebook as my filter, actually. So I think of it as, I'm really, really off the wall. I'm really crazy. I'm really energetic. I'm really out there. And if somebody is unable to handle my energy, then I'm not going to work with them, because I'm not going to tone down who I am and what I have achieved as a means to appease somebody else just for the almighty dollar. Now, other people will want to do that, and you do need to segment it. Now, does that necessarily mean you need to have something for a product versus a personal? Here's the question that we asked earlier, which is, how do we separate ourselves? Do we brand ourselves and then our art, or do we brand both of us? Are we our own brand? Is our art just the extension? That's the question you have to decide for yourself. I've seen people make it work on both cases. So, there is a case for both of them. But in my case, I've had people complain about how energetic I am, and then eventually they just stop complaining and they start to embrace it. But on the other hand, I've seen people try to emulate that, and it doesn't always work. Really, what it comes down to is what I was talking about earlier before this meeting, is that you have to figure out what social media you enjoy the most. You have to figure out how you interact on that social media, and you have to figure out what kind of privacy you want. Do you care about your potential employers seeing you acting goofy and joking around on the internet in a odd manner? Do you care about them seeing you as a person versus seeing you as a product or a cog? And because if you do, obviously don't use my method and use a more compartmentalized method. It's all about understanding the story, your comfort levels, what makes you happy, and how you're willing to present yourself. And the more comfortable you become with the world, the more free you become as an artist, and also how you're going to present yourself. So, yeah.
That was great. How about you, Yogi? You have anything to add to all that? Any observations?
It's echoing some of the sentiments we've heard already. I guess that I think that being patient with yourself and allowing yourself to go on your journey and remain curious will get you to that place of feeling courageous and brave to be your full self in public. And I don't think that I want people to take the time they need, each of them individually need, in order to get there.
Right. Yeah.
So I understand that being at a convention, there's a certain expectation to, meet and engage with people. But honestly, if somebody just sits there and draws all day, I mean, that to me is just as valuable. As long as they are finding their true selves. Now, if they can find community in a safe way that among 1 and 2 people, either online or face to face, great. And if they can, grow that. And I think for me, again, having worked most recently, mostly with young artists, is that to find that safe place for them to continue to be at peace with their ongoing evolution as an artist, to know that they're taking risks, and sometimes those risks are going to work and sometimes they're not going to work, and to be at peace with those things that are experimentations that don't always work, and but still feel that courageousness and that responsibility, that they're fulfilling a responsibility as an artist to try to respond to the world that they're experiencing, and their responsibility is to respond to the world. And that doesn't necessarily, I get the selling piece, but you know what? I mean, you can put your work up online and find your audience, as long as you can find some language, minimally some language that's written on your website or social media or Instagram or whatever, that can articulate what your worldview is and where you're coming from and what you'd like to see different in the world.
Makes sense.
Whether that's the beauty through dragons, fiction, fantasy, I mean, it doesn't really matter, as long as you know that because you're going to be working towards something for 60 or 70 years.
Yeah.
And it's going to be changing as the world around you changes, as the political world changes, as your personal economy changes, as your relationships change. I mean, so being at peace with your journey, I think, is what I try to do when I'm working with artists.
Excellent.
I've seen that way too much.
Kind of as a tangent to all of that. Earlier, Don, you were talking about how, especially as a publisher, how you're looking at an artist cultivating their personality, cultivating who they are, and that's speaking through and coming through in their artwork. And however, the question that came up for me in my mind as you were talking about that is there ever times where that becomes at odds? Like, what if the work that a publisher is looking for and that particular voice of that artist, like, they're at odds? I mean, how does that work? How does that dynamic, shift?
So that is when having a really compassionate and good art director comes in. My art director, Ayush, he's one of the best people I've ever worked with in the art community. I've spent the last year and a half trying to teach him how to really be a good art director, and he has been like a sponge to everything, and he's amazing at how he handles it. One of the things that came about was before he became the art coordinator position, is actually what we call it. Before he obtained that, though, he was working just as a contract artist for us. And at one point, we ran into an issue where he felt very strongly that the direction that I was wanting to take the typography for a piece was overstepping his personal taste as well as his personal understanding of design principles.
Mm-hmm.
So what was required there was something on my part, not necessarily his only. It was a requirement to be able to stand up for yourself, but present that stance in a coherent, logical, and non-confrontational manner, and explain to me why he felt that those changes were important, why he felt that that would take away from the integrity of the piece. And when he explained it to me the way that he did, it helped me learn something as an art director and as an artist, and it helped me understand more about compromise. And that's the name of the game. You know, you can't be a totalitarian. You know, you can't be a dictator about how you run your art department, and you can't expect your art director to bend over at every whim. Eventually, we came to a compromise, and we ended up knocking the typography out of the park, and we knocked the book cover out of the park, and we did a great job with it. But we had to come to that accord, and I had to explain to him my reasoning, and he explained his reasoning. And because I respect him as an artist, I was willing to give him that reasoning rather than simply saying, nope, this is it, this is my decision, this is how it's done. Now here's the catch to that. Not every person's going to be like that. Not every art director is going to be that way. Not every client's going to be that way. So you have to prepare yourself to have thick enough skin that you might end up dealing with someone who's not nearly quite as nice and friendly as the people in this room.
Right.
And so that's not something that I can necessarily prepare them for in one meeting. That's something that you're just going to have to experience and learn how to deal with, because every single person is going to process that differently. And, you know, to talk back to that journey that was mentioned earlier, you are going to have to go through your journey and experience those pain points yourself and figure out how you're going to handle them best. And then you can ask other people for advice and analyze that. How could I have handled that better later? Or how could they have handled it better? How can I deal with them so that I'm not having to create animosity in the workplace, etc.? Use the people around you that you can rely on, if you have them, to help as a sounding board, to bounce those ideas off of, to help you improve upon yourself. And always don't be self-critical, but be willing to evolve and change as you go. And that's really what I want people to take away, is that journey is a journey of evolution. And you've got, as mentioned, 60, 70 years. And over that time, you're going to change. Just as your art style might change and refine and evolve, you might find new things you like. You like a new medium. You like this. You like that. You as a person are going to change, because who you are at 20 is not who you are at 30, and how you deal with an art director at 20 is not how you're going to deal with them at 30, and so on subsequently and so forth.
And this
so
here is exactly
just don't be afraid of those situations.
And this here is exactly
Go
touching
ahead.
up on the topic that we said we would cover, is learning how to treat knife fight wounds like the pros. That's exactly what we're talking about. Even though that was a bit of a joke, like, yeah, it's learning how to take feedback, learning how to work with the people who are working with you and who have expectations of you. Even though that was there as a joke, it's definitely something that we repurposed for this conversation. Yogi, do you have anything to add to that stuff? Anything that Don brought up?
Well, I kind of like, you know, I mean, Don, the way I'm hearing what you're saying is not a clear distinction between what I would call personal and professional work, which is kind of interesting. And I think that when I'm working with young artists, I'm often talking with them about this idea of a pool or a community that they develop that gives them feedback on their personal work. And I think technique is one thing, or mastery of a certain, skill sets or tools that are used as you're working within, as you're producing your work, that might change or evolve over time, or you might introduce new tools or new media into your world. And tools and acquisition of skills is one thing that you can get both in the personal and the professional realm, and get good feedback on how to enhance and develop those things. I think that evaluating work that is personal work, that might be destined more for a gallery or something that is not commissioned, or not freelance or contract work, or not work as in graphic design or illustration within an agency or publishing world or something like that. Though, in my mind, those two things are kind of different worlds and different journeys, and in my experience, they kind of tap different parts of the brain. I think that being able to feel safe when you're getting that critique and have that resiliency inside, that you learn how to accept and take criticism in a way that is somewhat objective, is certainly required in a professional setting, and when you're working for somebody else, whether it's commission piece or whatever. Mm-hmm. But when you're doing your personal work, I think that having a critique environment where you can be more vulnerable, and maybe it's a little more close to your spiritual core or something, that I think that gets to be a little tricky, and I think that it's a different skill set or a different community of people that you might tap, that are less about maybe the technique or anything that is about the end user, and more about what is it that you're trying to communicate. And so I see those two things as two separate things. Not to say that anyone's right or wrong, and I do think that in order to survive financially in the world, that artists need to be able to work in both worlds. And I think that things that you learn in your personal work can be applied to your professional work, and I also think that things you learn in your professional work can be applied in your personal work. That being said, I think that the spiritual core that you find and explore in your personal work can inform your professional work in a greater or more impactful way than vice versa. I think that this is my bias, but I think that there's less that I've seen artists take from commercial or professional work that they've been able to apply, aside from technique or tools, to their personal work. So I think that there's an interesting dialogue that can go on there as people explore different ways to survive financially and do as much of their work as they can with the media that they and their artwork as they can, versus having a quote unquote a side job or a hustle or something like that.
I'd like to add a real quick segue. Actually, you gave me something that I thought a lot about. This is something that I want every artist to think about, not necessarily practice, but think about. It's the separation of professional versus personal, but it's also the separation of professional versus private life. Something that I found is the best friends I've ever made came from professional relationships. Now, if I go back and I speak to my father's era, I'm 29. My father came from, a very interesting era where the executives of a company did not make friends with anybody who was not an executive. You stuck to a specific peer group. However, something that I found, the thing that brings me the most success is understanding that my father, when he ran a company, he knew the story and the pain points of every single person who worked underneath him, and that could be 800 people at a facility. He would walk the rounds and he would learn about those people as much as he possibly could. And he taught me that every single person in that company is equal. It could be the CEO, or it could be the artist, or it could be the janitor. It doesn't matter who it is, they're all equal. And understanding that and realizing that you have the opportunity to make amazing friendships that'll last a lifetime, that would be part of your network, that could be both personal, private, or professional, is absolutely key. You go to school, and every single person that you're sitting in that classroom with is a potential person that could land you a job, or could be a future coworker, could be a future boss, could be a future person working underneath you.
Right.
That is your network that you're building over time as you're going to school. And so for me, it's a huge risk to take by blending the lines, as was mentioned, where you have personal versus professional. But for me, it's brought me success, because it makes me able to be more real with those people, because I get to see who really isn't just putting up a face of business, who isn't just putting up a face of, I'm trying to make a sale. I get to see someone at their raw core. And as an artist, that's what I live for.
On
That's
note,
just, I'm sorry for the quick tangent, but
no, the tensions are great. I mean, that's what this is supposed to be.
So
It's like
that
we're a
rock art,
roundtable.
is that something that you? Yeah, before you jump too in depth within the network topic, I was listening to you guys talking about like the personal versus professional work, and I mean, it remains a bit blurry to me as what really distinguish professional and personal work here. Mostly aside from work for clients or for self, but more, what's exactly personal work? Is that something you do for promo, or and does that change anything there?
So,
yeah, that's my question as well. If you're doing artwork, sorry,
one thing that,
Don, that was my question too. Just like I think I'm picking up on what Solange's asking. Like, if you're doing quote unquote personal work and you're putting it out there, but at the same time that personal work is driving your brand forward, is that still personal work, or does that then become professional work?
I guess it's something you can push.
So here's the thing. It depends on what you put out there and how you put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me give you another example that also plays on this, as well as another portion of topic previously. My roommate, Fletcher, he taught me a very important lesson. Just because something goes out to the public doesn't mean you have any right to critique it. Just because I'm looking at something he's working on doesn't mean I have any right to critique it. Because, especially if it's a personal project. If it is something that's coming from his heart, and he hasn't asked me specifically for critique, I'm not going to give him critique, because at the end of the day, I do that, and it's going to piss him off. We're going to get into an argument, and because this is for him. This isn't for the rest of the world. This isn't for anybody else except for him to express what's inside of him. And so that is what I view personal art as. However, personal art can be a vehicle for promotion, for sales, for things like that. And if your personal art is counterintuitive to the brand that you're trying to put out, say you're trying to put out something that is controversial, that is a personal piece that that disagrees with who you are trying to portray yourself as an artist professionally, that can send a mixed message and muddy your brand. So you have to be careful about that when you're pushing that out. So instead, as was mentioned earlier, find that little small group of people that you can show that art to, and ask them what they feel about it. Ask them what does it evoke in them? Is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? Art is subjective, but at the end of the day, putting the wrong art out can damage who you are from a marketing perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say the wrong art, I mean wrong that is counter to what the message is that you're trying to get out. Not necessarily that any art is wrong, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have anything to add to all that?
Or bad. Thank you. Sorry, I don't
bad
mean that, but or bad.
You're a bad artist. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I personally veer away from anything dealing with politics. I know a lot of artists they just kind of put it all out there, and kudos to them. But I'm one that separates them. Personally, I have a personal Facebook page where I share my thoughts or things about my family, my kids. Anything just generally lighthearted and social. And then I have a separate account where it's my professional page, and I don't really talk about anything. I just say, hey, here's a new cover that I did. Here's a link to the author. If you dig these kind of stories, go check him out, that sort of thing. And just use it as a means to plug my clients and to show off my work is like sort of like a mini moving gallery. And then my website, of course, which is just kind of like my own little island. But and which is also like really sparse and direct and to the point. And that's my perspective.
Yeah.
For the people that I think that mix the two, for those that want to do that or who are doing it, I think there's one caveat. You got to be all in.
Yeah.
I think that like in your mind and your decisions, you can't be on the fence. I'm like, oh, should I be doing this? Or like, oh, this is weird. Or like no second guessing. I think if you're gonna put it out there, you just really gotta just throw yourself out there and put everything that comes to mind or whatever you are impulsed by, to be, I think, as like honest as possible.
Yeah.
Because if you're like what you were saying, Don, about mixed messages, if you've got the one page, for example, and you're mixing it all up, but you're holding back, I think it's going to hurt you more than help you. For those that I have seen that mix it up and don't have a split between professional and personal, that's exactly what they do. They put it all out there, and
that's what I do.
It's all a blur. It's all a blur of like who they are professionally and personally.
This is actually really good.
But some people just want to be private,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say this is like a really good tangent to dive into one of the topics that we say we would cover is learning how to make yourself popular by being controversial, or and that can mean anything. It can mean controversial in politics. It can mean the way that you engage with other people. I'm sure many of us can think of artists who do public mudslinging battles with other artists, either because of technique or some other kind of way that is art related as a way to justify behaving that way. How do you guys feel about that from a branding and marketing and social media perspective? I want to start with Yogi this time.
Like any publicity is good publicity.
Yeah, I mean, is that really true?
I mean, it depends. I think there's a line. I think that it is helpful, but of course, it's like what they say: what goes online, it just stays there forever, right?
Right.
And I think that it is fine if you have if you have the wherewithal to be controversial about something. I don't. I find that's again why I stay out of politics. It just it takes too much energy away from the things that I think are priorities for me.
Right.
Right. Because I've already set in line what my priorities are.
Yeah.
So, and being controversial isn't one of them. It takes too much energy away from what I got to do. So, but for those that do have it and they do have that impulse to behave that way, I think it's totally fine. However, I think if you take it too far, it can backfire. I've seen that happen. And there's really no way to tell where that line is. So I would err on this side of being conservative and just say, don't bother. I think that's, in my opinion, that's the best way to go. But I'm not a ballsy kind of guy.
That's generally
more
how
conservative
I feel about
that way
it as well. But I do want to hear if there's any pros and cons to it. Besides, any publicity is good publicity, as Jen pointed out, because it's true. I guess to some extent. Anything from Yogi or John?
In some people's cases, it can be.
Yeah. No? Okay. Cool.
I think it's just really dependent on the personality. Yeah. I don't think he heard you. Maybe not.
Oh, looks like Yogi's going to dive in.
Well, my 2 cents on this would be that I think that if you come from a place of privilege, see, first of all, the question kind of bothers me in that is controversial, is that coming as a, is it artificial or is it authentic?
Right. I think that's a really great
If
distinction.
you have something to say that's authentic and authentic to you, then it's a cost-benefit analysis problem. If you have a lot of privilege, in other words, you got $1 million in the bank and everything's paid for, and you don't have to worry about clients whose value system might be different than yours anywhere in the future, near or far future, say what you want and find your clients. And you will find clients based on your value system. There are enough people in the world who have enough needs to bring you business.
Yeah.
And the more you put yourself out there authentically, the more you're going to find those clients, the more quickly you're going to find those clients. If, as a young or mid-career artist, you need to have a mix of corporate and nonprofit and commissions or other kinds of work that you're doing that might not have a high tolerance for points of view that take a position or stand that might hurt, harm, or not be in alignment with their brand or their brand identity, then that's a risk, and that is not a position of privilege, and that's a consideration you need to make. And so I think that it's very difficult, and so that to for some people who to be that authentic. That being said, the LOHAS community, if you're into environmental concerns or considerations, is huge. It's a 17 or $70 billion company globally, a market segment globally. The left of center is, it doesn't. There's a huge market out there if you want to start aligning yourself with your personal or political views on any number of topics. And I think, again, it depends upon your feeling of freedom and that sense of having the ability to find those clients might help you feel more courageous to be able to say those things. On the other hand, some people just don't, it's just not on their radar to care that much about politics or, any number of other topics that could be seen as controversial. But to me, I think the core thing is whether or not you're speaking your authentic truth. And if you're speaking your truth in a way, I think it's almost our responsibility as artists, ideally, to be able to speak that truth. However, we do have to make a living, and we do have to have a suite or a whole bunch of different clients that we need to consider as we start to get more and more bold with the things we're seeing in the world and what we want to say about them.
So wield that responsibility responsibly.
That's that's what I was gonna say is, I think, to sum up what that is it's sort of like drinking. You do it in moderation, or you don't do it. Because if you go to extreme, at the end of the day, it's that basic law of, for every action there's an equal or greater reaction. You have to think about what is that reaction going to be to what you're saying, to what you're doing, and can you live with it? And if part of your core, as Yogi has said, is I'm controversial, I can live with it, I can deal with it, I'm going to do it. Be authentic, then it's you. I mean, who are we to say that people can't do that? Right. They can't say what they can't say what they want to say. But at the same time, understand that being controversial like that will lose you clients potentially, will lose you business in the future, will lose you a lot of things. And you don't want to have to do that. For me, I have taken a stance in the past where I love freelance lifestyle and I love a indie lifestyle, because trying to deal with corporatocracy, if you will, the bureaucracy of the corporate environment is stressful, and you end up becoming a cog. That's something that I'm going to say a lot, and because that's something I'm passionate about. Is, you know, that's why I was part of Texas Freelance Association. That's why I try to provide freelancers with as much information as I possibly can to help support them, both free or for pay, whatever it may be. You know, I'll barter if I don't care, just to help support them. That's something that I'm out there about, but I understand the consequence of that is I may upset a corporate giant by turning someone down, instead wanting to work as a freelancer. I may be burning a bridge doing that. And that's something that I want people to understand is do not torch bridges unless you absolutely have to. And if you do, try and burn it gently rather than just straight up taking a flamethrower to it, because burning a bridge in your networking is a lot different than just ripping a Band-Aid off of a problem. Once you do that, the game industry, the entertainment industry as a whole, it's a very small world. And the problem that we have is when you start burning those bridges, you know, on a professional level, you're starting to get a name for yourself. And if you're a young artist, as Yogi works with, that's an especially big problem. As a 20-year veteran, you have a lot more, as he mentioned, privilege. You have the allowance to be able to be more bombastic. You have the allowance to be a little bit more controversial, regardless of whether that's you being authentic or not. You still have that allowance to do that. But as a younger artist, understand that the consequences are amplified significantly as any form of artist, depending upon how long you've been in the industry, how many contacts you've made, and how many, you know, say you have 5 networking contacts in the industry, and you're going to burn bridges with 3 out of 5 of those people by making one post. You literally have 2 people left, and if those 3 people go off and know all the people that could give you your future, you have just lost your chance at a career, potentially. You have to understand the extremes of those consequences as well, the micro and macro, the risk analysis, as Yogi mentioned. It's incredibly important to think about that. So try to be professional at all times, even if you are trying to be empathetic and compassionate, but still remain professional in the aspect of pissing people off can be your brand. I mean, there are plenty of people out there that do that, but that's what they do for a living. That is literally their career.
Right.
If that is not your career and you are not a political comic artist, then don't put yourself out there like that necessarily, unless you are able and willing and have the privilege and the ability to accept those consequences.
Yeah. So basically,
otherwise, it is what it is.
Yeah. So basically, free speech, not free of consequence for your speech. Yeah.
Right. I just wanted to add to that a little bit in that I think you can do whatever you want. I personally agree that one should try to remain as professional as possible in the social atmosphere. While others can have fun, it's up to you. But
right.
I think one should remember that no matter what industry you're choosing to be in, it's a lot smaller than you think. A lot of like I know that in the entertainment industry, especially in publishing, a lot of the big publishers, art directors know each other, especially the bigger ones. And even in the smaller ones, if they don't know each other personally, it's an acquaintance or they're connected somehow. I know in the games industry, a lot of people know each other across the boards. Definitely in film. There just keep in mind that it does seem like a big world out there with the work and the different fields, but they're actually a lot smaller than you think. So keep that in mind as you behave yourself online.
Yeah.
I just kind of wanted to like quickly like run through a little bit of what we just covered, if that's cool.
Yeah, great.
And I think that like it, you know, we kind of started off with assessing who you are and what you stand for, what you believe in, what's important to you, and learning how to be confident in yourself and in your work. Know how you want to present yourself online. Be if you want to have a split, like if it's a professional and a personal page or a website or blog or whatever, or you want to kind of mash everything together. Mind your behavior and be aware of your industry. Because I think that it would be important for us and for whoever's watching to kind of maybe bridge into brass tacks about what people exactly can do in order to market themselves better. Because I think what we just covered is more internal, and we're sort of coming out into the external of how to present that external. But I think there might be some young artists who are just out of school, or even older artists who just don't know what to do and are looking for like, okay, well, what are like a couple of steps that I can do? And I know a lot of it's individualized per person, but maybe you guys have some pointers that would be good skill sets, maybe, or tools that they can do or use to help broaden their marketing and how to maybe solidify their personal brand.
I'll go ahead and jump. One thing that I do want to say that is very much in what you just suggested. Someone very close to me, my mother, actually taught me this. She's been doing brand identity stuff since she was back in the 80s. She was a marketing executive at the ripe old age of 24 years old for a defense contractor. And something that she learned over the years and taught me is, especially with the advent of social media, if you're posting something online, ask yourself, how would your grandmother feel about you posting that online? I mean, what would she think when you're posting those certain things that I won't discuss all over the internet or sending to people and so forth? I mean, would you really want her standing behind you when you're posting those things? I think that is the biggest thing that a budding artist can learn, is what to say, what not to say, and just, try to be open-minded to other people, because the climate of social media is controversy by nature. Mm-hmm. That's just the nature of social media. And, I will tell you that the algorithms that are in place are meant to keep conversation going, and conversation continues through either agreed and mutual discussion, debate, or the extreme of controversy. And the idea of, yes, the controversy gets you ratings, but it takes away from the benefit of growth. Growth comes when you're debating and you're able to actually meet minds from different people, different points of view. So let me give you an example. As an artist, this is a skill example. Broadening your skill set and becoming more general in what you can do, but having a specialty at what you specialize in is important. So say you don't know how to use a pastel, an oil pastel medium at all. You don't know how to use that. So what do? You go off and you talk to somebody and you learn how to do that. They teach you and you teach them something in reply. That is networking 101, a brain dump. The biggest tool that I can give any young budding artist is to learn to think about your grandmother behind you while you're trying to post on social media. Learn how to network properly with grandma standing behind you, so that you're not saying something you're going to regret. And also, if you're doing the draw and drink episodes, realize that you might say something a little bit off kilter while you're inebriated, and recognize the repercussions that will come from that, and wait until you're, a veteran to do that kind of stuff, because you might destroy your brand in the process. Just always think about networking, who you meet. Okay, for networking for me, that's one of the biggest things I teach. I love to teach that because I love people, and I recognize that every single person at a company is valuable. Every single person I meet on the street can teach me something new. Always be learning and always be growing, and soak up that knowledge like a sponge, and accept that the person that's on the street that you meet could be the next CEO that you talk to, or they might know the next CEO that you would talk to, or that may not even matter. You may just simply learn something new, a new outlook and a new thing on life. Be able to reframe and be flexible. That's the toolkit I use, and that's why I'm successful
And
at
Ariel
what
in
I do.
the Twitch chat says, open discussion is a must. Sharing, learning, connecting, etc. It's a give and take cycle. Help you today, help me tomorrow. And I think I would add to that
Right.
you know.
So what would you say? Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I think what I would add to that, I think there's a little bit of a delay because I'm streaming. What I would add to that is that you know, when you help someone too, though, you shouldn't help them with the expectation that they're going to help you tomorrow, right? Like when you help someone, you should help them authentically. Like this, authenticity is a topic that I keep hearing coming up over and over and over, regardless of what we're talking about. And I think that's great. I think it's really great. But yeah, that's just all I wanted to add about the help you today, help me tomorrow.
Saul?
Yes.
I was just going to say what you were talking about is the law of reciprocity, and basically it's I do for you, you do for me. That can be useful, but that should never be the intent of why you do something for someone. Do it because you're doing it for them, just because you're doing it.
Right, because if you're doing it with an expectation, then you're not really doing it as authentically to help. You're doing it authentically to get something for yourself afterwards. Yeah, Justin, you wanted to say something?
Don, did you have something to say?
No, I was just apologizing for interrupting.
Sorry, Yogi said. I thought I saw Yogi raise his finger. That he wanted to say something.
I appreciate, Justin, the recap, and that's really great. And I do espouse endlessly and tirelessly and advocate for people of all ages to try to find a way to live into their truth. And this is kind of a Occam's razor challenge in this conversation for me, because I think that some of what you're talking about is this idea of trying not to commit career suicide through being extreme or something like that, or offending corporate powers or the normative culture. At the same time, I think that many, many people in the world are then compromising their truth in order to not offend corporate and or not offend the norms, cultural norms, which are predominantly white, male, and straight. Sure. And I think that it's a very difficult thing to, you're not being authentic if you are compromising yourself to appease where you think your next paycheck's coming from. I believe that there's a lot of work out there, and you will find your audience, and you will find your clients. And it might not be the Fortune 100s, the Fortune 500s, even the Fortune 1000s, but you will find enough clients, especially if you can work remotely, that share your values. And I think so that's the challenge, it's to know yourself, know what you stand for, know how you see the world and how it affects you, and then how that effect is expressed through your work, and to work toward that. And I agree that as a young artist, you have less latitude and less choice, and there's more Mephistophelian kind of sell your soul to the devil kind of moments, because you need to pay the rent, and you need to do, get your student loans and everything else taken care of. At the same time, as you work through your career, you can choose. You don't have to acquiesce to the standard norms of the culture as they exist today. You can actually find allies and friends and colleagues and community to shape a new way of doing things, a new way of being accepted for how you see and experience the world. And that doesn't mean burning bridges. It just might be saying, hey, it's been great working with you. I'm moving on to the next client.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know of anybody who likes the things that I like, send them my way. And so I think it's a very difficult thing to learn, but I think that I'm hesitant to endorse people accepting the way things are today in order to, because they're going to kill themselves spiritually, and that's going to kill their art.
Yeah, what are
you might remain a good technician, but you might not have the heart and soul in your work. So that's my 2 cents for radicalism.
Yeah, you might do money working for a company, but if it doesn't fit with what your values, you're just losing yourself.
Right.
And
that
so,
sometimes brings people to go freelance, maybe.
On that
like
note,
I know, Don, you recently gone freelance, right?
Well, there are a lot of corporations that have a lot of different worldviews as well.
Yeah, it's
true.
Oh, yeah.
It's
especially
not
now,
exclusive.
Now in a world that we have specific.
I was just going to say thank you, by the way, Yogi, for saying that. That's really important because at the end of the day, you know, our job as an artist is not to make money. It's not to appease corporations. It's not to appease people necessarily. It's to express who we are. I mean, that's literally the core value that drives us to be an artist is expression. And, you know, if we're not remaining true to ourselves, that's absolutely key. But what I think is understanding where we can find that line of, you know, being stuck in working for that corporate environment is learning how the delivery of the belief. It's more so than what is that belief. It's how do I deliver how I feel about this situation, and allowing that to be part of your core rather than necessarily just going off hinge and off, flying off the wall, if you will, about something. Instead saying, hey, I don't appreciate this, but, you know, rather than using a lot of expletive deleteds, if you will. And now I will say, if that is who you are, that's just who you are. It means you're going to have a lot less job opportunity because, you know, in my experience, the best veterans I know will tell you, it doesn't matter how good you are. If nobody's willing to work with you, there's nothing you can do. I mean, you're just not going to get jobs, and you're going to have to be a freelancer. And I've experienced that in both the corporate environment as well as my own personal environment. So, I mean,
people skills.
People skills is really what it comes down to, is learning not to piss people off because of your beliefs. And if you can get somebody to understand and respect your beliefs and stay true to yourself, you have done what is your core as an artist. You have expressed yourself and evoked emotion in somebody without going off and making them want, you know, to fire you or throw you out the window. You know, I mean, that's the core. That's the key.
Right. I think right now.
Once you've got those people.
Yeah, go ahead, Solange.
Go on.
Hey. No, go ahead, Solange.
I was saying, like, once you got those people skills and you've gathered some confidence, what someone was wondering, like, was wondering what are some smart businesses decisions to make when trying to transition from freelance work to going full time with personal project. Are there any revenue streams available that people don't usually think about or take advantage of?
I see lots of giggling.
It's a good question. Yeah, it's a good question.
That's because that is a good question.
A lot of it requires. I think it requires being solid in all the things that Don and Yogi are talking about. I think you got to be solid on who you are, what your aims are, being confident and know where you stand with your, I guess maybe your belief structure and how you approach your work, your methodology, and a whole slew of things. I think because there's so many like personal projects that are put out there. I mean, just take a look through Kickstarter, and a lot of them will flop. And I think the ones that don't, aside from other technical things, like they know how to do this, that, and the other, but they know where the whole picture stands, and it's a very personal thing to them. But I don't know. That's my take on it. I'm going like from freelance to dropping that and going full like personal IP development.
Yeah,
that's a hard one. That's so the dream of an artist is to subsist off of their own ideas, their own original intellectual property, and to be able to just pump. I'm gonna tell you that it's really difficult and it takes a lot of work. I mean, even Chris Sanders has difficulty doing this at times, and he's one of my personal heroes as far as art goes. He goes off and sets the tone for How to Train Your Dragon, Lilo and Stitch, all that good stuff, art style wise and whatnot. But it required a lot of success to be able to jump off of that. So how people usually do it is they do the blood, sweat, and tears stuff, and they burn the candle at both ends. But you can only do that so long. So they're working their normal job, their 9 to 5, they're doing the freelance, they're doing the studio job, whatever it may be. And then on the side, they're losing sleep because they're going off and working on the personal project that maybe is going to make money. It doesn't always make that money. And that's the unfortunate side of things. And it's a huge gamble that you have to be willing to take.
It is, yeah.
There's not a lot of people that immediately, right out the gate, can jump on those projects. And I don't have an immediate answer for something to that. I would have to think more on it. That's me just being honest. Other than it's just a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and lost sleep if you want to be able to work on personal projects rather than projects for other people on top of that stuff. Or it's eating a lot of ramen and living with your parents and hoping that they'll subsidize you until you hit it big. I mean, that's...
Yogi, do you have anything to add with right now?
Yogi, you got any ideas?
I just wanted to hear the question again, Solange.
Oh, sure. Solange, you got it?
Yes. What are some smart business decisions to make when trying to transition from freelance work to going full-time with personal projects? And the second question was, are there any revenue streams available that people don't usually think about or take advantage of?
I forgot about the second one.
So it sounds like somebody who has been working freelance is considering working full-time. And I think that it's just almost like making those stupid lists about the benefits and the detriments to each of the two choices and making that decision. Again, for me, if it was me, I would consider culture about going into a workplace first. Because as a freelancer and I'm working project to project, if I don't like the client, I can just not work with that client again on the next project. And if I am entering into a culture and I'm letting go or letting my suite of freelance clients go, I'm sacrificing them or maybe bringing one or two in with me to a full-time position, but I'm letting most of them go. That's a big shift. That's a big change. And then the culture, the better the cultural fit between how I see and experience the world and the place that I'm working sees and experiences the world, or accepts me for how I see and experience the world, and allows me to be my true, authentic, and fully lived self at work, is then I'm going to do better work for them and with them. and allow me to work with clients that give me energy, strength, and vitality. So that would be, for me, the number one thing to consider. And it's not just about flex work time. For me, it would more be about how they see and experience the world politically, socially, and inclusively, etc. As far as like opportunities, I think government is constantly and consistently overlooked as a client. There is so much data viz that can be done for clients that is kind of a no-brainer for most artists or many artists who are comfortable looking at data and creating appealing and compelling visualization from data. Government just swims and drowns in data, and from top to bottom, from cities to counties to states to federal, I mean, there's endless amounts of work that they need in order to communicate the impact, the effects, the needs that they have. It's just, I think, endlessly overlooked in a variety of ways, not just data viz, but that's the one that comes to mind first. So I think that's just one whole sector that is continually overlooked. And they're more, often more diverse and more, have more needs and you can create more creative work than they even realize. And often you see the stuff and it looks really boring, and it's because not enough of us work with them. So
that kind of ties into
And so I'm going to be really inclined to agree. I'm sorry. I was just going to say I very strongly agree with the governmental sector. Some of the most successful people I know that work on personal projects all the time are, in fact, doing government projects. I mean, they have government clients that fund the bills, if you will, put food on the table and all that. And then one thing that I will say that's kind of a happy accident is it may take 4 hours to do this project. You get paid well, and it's boring and it's tedious, but then you get the reward of getting to go work on your project. And so that psychological brain reward, at the end of the day, what is a video game? It's brain reward. It's, you do this, you get this. It's feeding that reward there, or that center in your brain that needs that reward. And so by being able to do that 4 hours, you're keeping the lights on, and suddenly you're able to make what you want to. You have that freedom. How I do it, personally, I made a transition. I recently stepped down from a position at a college that was on top of my director position, on top of my freelancing stuff, because I wanted to be able to do more freelancing stuff in line with the director thing. And so what I do to offset that is I tutor people. I teach them on business, on marketing, on art, and I teach them the fundamentals of that, and I also consult. And so I find that fun. Not everybody does. I don't know if that's something that is accessible to everybody. One thing that I will say is, because of the advent of exactly what we're on, Twitch, and all the other things, you have the ability to teach people all across the world. As was mentioned by Yogi, there is somebody out there. I'm teaching people in Canada, I'm teaching people in Australia, I'm teaching people here in the United States, I'm teaching people in South America. I have clients all over the world that I'm teaching about this stuff because of the advent of all this. So think about this. If you have a mentorship mindset, then spread the knowledge, and you don't have to charge a whole lot. All you have to charge is enough to be able to keep all of your needs met while you work on the personal project. Don't be greedy about it, but don't sell yourself short. And because knowledge itself, you shouldn't be charging out the nose for that necessarily, unless it's a corporation, in which case, different subject, different topic.
In line with that, there was a question.
I want to just put in a point about. Oh, man, that delay.
Yeah, sorry. It's like being on CNN over satellite. We have our correspondent in Italy who's going to be talking. Yeah, Justin, how's the weather there? Were you going to bring up something new, or was that in relation to what just got talked about, Justin?
I was going to mention this. I was going to try to answer a bit on the second part of that question, which the different revenue streams.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Let's dive into that really quick.
Well, just first off, like if you're a generalist, okay, so I'm just looking at, let's say, like just illustrators. If you're a generalist, you have a greater opportunity, right? And really, that's just looking at the world around you, I think, and being like, where do I see handmade images, right? It could be posters in the subway. It could be periodicals. It could be things in newspapers. It could be advertising for packaging. It could be a whole slew of different things. Like governmental stuff, like stamps. I know a guy who recently got a stamp gig. Like, how do you do that? Like, for U.S. Postal, National Geographic covers. It's just all over the place. Now, if you are more specified, right, and most of the people that I interact with they are very much specified, and then just like, not only do they just like to do fantasy, they just like to do dragons. Like, that's it. They just do dragons. And so my advice to the people who are specified: find out where your products are being sold. Where do you want to get involved in, right? So what I would say is go to hobby shops, go to game stores, okay, comic book stores, and look at all of the things that they're selling, right? And it can be toys, T-shirts, mugs, hats, bags, like anything that you see an image on is something that you can apply your work to. Really, it's just finding out, like, knowing what kind of artist you are and where you want to apply your work, and trying to find out the various places that you could do that. And it just requires just some research. It requires, like, no one's gonna just come out and hand you the answers, right? Because we don't know what's appealing to you. Some people really want to put their work on T-shirts, right?
Yeah.
And so they got to find out themselves, who the manufacturers are, and so on and so forth. I have no desire to put my artwork on T-shirts, so I don't even bother with that. You just got to do the legwork, go places, and take a notebook with you and write stuff down. There's no real direct answer. It's just again, knowing who you are, knowing what you want to do, and finding those revenue streams.
Don, it looks like
no one's going to give you the answers.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I actually, he brought me up just real quick. I was just going to say opportunity.
Okay.
Think about opportunity. A very good friend of mine, she's got a new job at a place, and they found out she's an artist, and suddenly she's doing artwork for them also on top of her normal job and being paid as a contractor for that on top of it. So always think about opportunity. Always think about a chance to present the fact that you are an artist, even if you're not working in an artistic situation. Always have that opportunity, or always look for those opportunities. That's all I wanted to point out. And I think it's directly in conjunction with what Justin was saying.
Yeah, got it. Yogi?
So I'll just dovetail and wrap up on that one as well. I agree with those points. The thing that we are trained in as creative and critical thinkers. Most people are concrete linear thinkers. Most people are trained to see things as a cause effect, as sort of a sequence. You do this and it results in that. And we ask the question, what if? We're curious. We look at a myriad of options, endless options, and we solve for the unknown, and we work with limited resources. And we're, the things that we can bring to business with the training that we have is so much more than somebody who's trained as an accountant, strictly as an accountant, or strictly as a project manager. Now, listen, I love numbers. I have an MBA. I mean, I think that, there's creativity in that too. Mm-hmm. But I also think that we as creatives have a very unique way of looking at the world and understanding the world and seeing things in interconnected systems and a sort of a second or third tier response to any moment that, or any small thing we trigger. So it might be that we're doing something that involves visualization or time-based media, but it might be just being in a room while people are trying to solve problems that we can help them see and understand things in a unique way.
Yeah, that's a really good recap and wrap up of everything that we just went into. Now, a lot of the topics that we've been talking about talk about opportunity. We've been talking about. We've talked a little bit about priorities, which I think Anariel in the chat here brought up priorities as a counter to free work, and that's in line with the next question that we were going to jump into here. Ben asked in the event page. His question would be, what are your thoughts on doing free work? If I had the time and no need of extra money, should I do free work for a chance of possible exposure, or should I always make my art and time be worth something?
You're down if you're doing free work for people. I'm just gonna say this right here. You're doing a disservice to every single person on this stream, every single person that is in our profession, every single person that will future be in our profession, because you're devaluing yourself and thus the rest of us.
Yeah.
The perpetuation of free work and the perpetuation of artists are just artists. We're not just artists. We have been drawing since we were 2 years old. Since I could pick up this highlighter, I have been using it. You know, that's the point. You're not paying for that 2 hours that we're spending to knock something out. You're paying for the 20 years that we spent drawing so we could knock it out in 2 hours.
But you
that's really what it comes down to. And if you go off and you do that, you are, you know, if you go off and you do that, you are devaluing the entirety of every single one of your peers. And the people who do that are only going to continue to allow others to prey upon us. We have to stand together and say, no, hard stance for me.
I answered Ben earlier, but I'll repeat it.
Sure.
Just for everybody else, I've done free work once in my career. I've been freelancing for 9 years now. And it was my second video game gig, and it was a great group of guys, right? See these things, they can be very alluring, right? Because the leader of the group, he was like on top of his shit. He had a history of working in the games industry. He was much older, wiser. He knew a lot, okay? And he was the big organizer. And he was also a 3D artist. Then he had me on doing concept work. And then he had 2 other guys doing 3D, and he had a coder on board as well. And none of us were getting paid, or at least to my knowledge anyways. I could have been the only one. But none of us were getting paid, and we were developing, and like I got to see some of my designs as 3D assets, and then it lost its steam, right? Because life got in the way. Life got in the way, and things just the project fell into a ditch, and we disbanded for all I know, and it was done. And I told Ben that like, unfortunately, the way it is, even with passion projects, money talks.
Yeah.
Money motivates.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the sort of thing that keeps you serious and keeps you honest, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you've got an investor lined up who's like, I'll put this money in, but I'm going to take it out of your ass if I don't get my money back, that is a huge motivator to get those projects done, to stay up late and work through your assignments. Or the promise of a big return, you know, you're getting some analytics back and some feedback to the project or whatever, and you're like, holy shit, this is going to be awesome. And so the promise of more money based on what you already have, right? And it's just the simple reward system, right? Like you're busting your butt, and there's this immediate thing, and your project lead goes, okay, here you go, boom, here's some money your way. Thank you so much for your tireless work here. Like it's really just a sometimes a sad state of affairs, but not really if you've got big responsibilities, a family, a house, bills, or whatever. But I would advise definitely not doing free work at all. But you might want to do it just for the experience of being like, oh, so that's what it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna do that, you may as well work collaboratively with someone.
There's no risk in it. I mean, there's. Sorry?
Oh, what you just said about getting that experience of working within a structure, like I think that is valuable, especially when you're starting out. But yeah, I mean, make it something that you at least believe in, right? Because no one is by any means obligated
he's also
to do free work for anybody. What's that, Don?
So he also means, though, getting experience of getting screwed over.
That's
experience.
That's exactly what I mean.
You know how you said the knife fight earlier. Getting stabbed.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to understand what that feels like. You have to be able to take a punch to the face to understand that your face isn't going to shatter when you do it.
Right. That's what I was getting at. That say there's a cool project that comes along, and you do have your bills taken care of, and like on one hand, I would say, sure, you know what, why not? Like, and you might gain some great understandings from that. I got not at all from the project. I got a great understanding of human behavior, and that was the most valuable thing that I took from that. But like professionally, it's kind of like shooting yourself in the foot, because all that time that you spend on this free project, you could spend on your marketing and your research, your client outreach, or what have you, your studies, and there's like so many other ways that are constructive to use your time. So I don't know. I think skipping it, although you can learn some great lessons from doing a free project, I think skipping it, the positives of skipping it outweigh anything you could possibly learn from doing a free project.
Yeah.
One thing that I do want to say, though, is bartering and free are two entirely different things.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So if somebody is giving you something in return, that's a different matter. So say, you don't have $500 to go off and visit a massage therapist to get your back in line. Like, I decided I didn't have $500 for that. And so I went off and did a logo for 10 sessions because I wanted to use that $500 elsewhere, like a savings account. And so in exchange, I decided to give up some of my time so that someone else would give up some of their time for me. That you can do bartering, that's fine, but understand that there has to be that value, that monetary value of the barter. And by the way, you are legally obligated to put a barter in your taxes, just so you know. That's something that most artists might not know about. If you're going off and have an actual monetary value to it, you do have to claim it.
Can you make a distinction between bartering and being promised exposure?
Could you re-say that?
Can you make a distinction between bartering and being promised exposure?
Okay, so bartering is this person is actually giving you something in exchange. Like you are literally getting a service. Like I get my back worked on because my back is messed up in exchange for me doing something for them. Getting exposure is, hey, I'm going to go off and I need a logo. I'm not going to pay you anything for it. But once I make it big, then you'll get everybody seeing everything for you. That's exposure. The difference is one, you're gaining nothing on spec most oftenly. The other one, you immediately gain something, and it is an agreed upon translation of money. So say $50 equals one session for massage, and I'm charging $50 or $500. That has a direct monetary equivalent. What does not have a direct monetary equivalent is somebody saying, I'm not going to pay you for this album cover, but when I make it big, which they probably won't in a lot of cases because just the case of numbers, they're getting free work. there's no return on investment in a lot of cases. Now, if you're making the next Mastodon cover, that's a different matter. You may actually get some exposure there.
That's actually a good lead
But
into
even
one of our
then,
questions.
you still want to charge.
Sneaky Ink wants to know, so what about if you go to someone offering your services in hopes to build a relationship with them? Is that still a hard no?
Well, I'll just jump in here with a slightly different perspective, but echoing the same sentiments.
Okay.
So I think that there are a number of times and ways in which I or artists I've known have offered services for free, and what they're trying to do is get a portfolio piece, get exposure, be seen as having a relationship with this, other entity, person, business, whatever. And or hone their skills on a certain tool or a certain platform, and those are sometimes ways in which, instead of just working on a faux project at home, you can actually hone your skills in editing or a certain software platform or something like that. That being said, I always advise, when asked, to have some sort of a contract that says, because what happens is, if you do it the one time for free, even if you go back, they're going to come back. If they're somehow come into money in the future, they're going to come back to you and say, well, you did it last time for free. This time I can give you $500. But even if you're charging $500 for a logo, you know that that's nowhere near what the logo should be costing. And so, you never win. If you, however, you're able to say, I'd like to have a contract with you, I'm going to do a one-off with you, and you're going to pay me $500, and I'm going to turn around and buy a product or service from you for $500. So you actually make it a wash if you're going to do something for free, but have a contract with them. And so that there's kind of, for tax purposes or whatever, and or in principle. For me, I think that what I get offended by is that people come to us as, well, in this case, we're talking about design, but as artists and designers, they come to us to make something pretty. I mean, to me, a logo is not a brand. And there's likely a lot more work that massage therapist, for example, could benefit from you or somebody else working with them on brand development, and or that could really grow their business so that they'd have four massage therapists working with them if that's the path they wanted to go down. I mean, there's a lot that we know how to do, that we can help them do. When they're asking for a transactional relationship that is based just on a simple, delivery of a really simple skill, I think it really does lessen what we have to offer, metaphorically.
How did you like the screen real quick? Because I want to like what you're saying right now. That's awesome. Thank you.
So I think that the further the closer we can get to decision making within a company's, and not have it be tied to visual or auditory deliverables, whether you're doing a jingle or a sound score for a film or anything like that. But the more we can be invited to the conversation around the creative shaping of ideas, if this is contract work, and the more that we do these transactional things, the less we're going to be prone to get to those conversations at the front end of developing a project, an idea, a business, whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's where we belong. And that's why the world fails, is because they're looking to us to solve for a problem that they've already screwed up before they've handed it to us. And all we can do is try to make it look as good and pretty and functional as possible. But we needed to be in the conversation months before they came to us in order to not have it be handed to us in this sorry state. So I think doing this stuff for free, I get it. I would just encourage you and others, if you don't need the dough, just get a contract, write a contract, scope of work, have it really clear, have it be transactional. I get it. And then the next time they come back to you, they know exactly what they were supposed to be paying you.
Yeah, excellent stuff.
Earlier, it was mentioned, what's a toolkit? This is important. It's exactly what Yogi's talking about. This is for every single one of you out there that are a freelancer or a studio artist. I don't care which position you're in. You need to understand contracts. You need to understand contract law to a degree to protect yourself as well as to protect those around you. You also need to have a library of contracts that you understand fully, that you have written or those you trust that are lawyers have written. You need to have a very strong understanding of that, or have people who can define that understanding for you. That, obviously isn't requiring a consultation necessarily, but if you're not sure about a contract, ask around, have other people help you interpret that contract, because at the end of the day, contract is what keeps the bread on the table. And having strong contracts that are in your favor, in your arsenal when you're a freelancer, can literally make or break whether or not you get to celebrate your birthday because you have no money for that birthday. And whether or not you're having to dip into your savings because somebody just screwed you out of $2,500 because they just decided they don't want to give you money. The toolkit to be able to transfer into any position needs to be in it. Is a very strong understanding of it and a little library of them. And I'm going to give you two different types of contracts you're going to want to understand. One is a work for hire contract. Another is a hybrid statement of work. As Yogi mentioned earlier, a scope of work. So a statement of work is basically as it says, a statement of work. It can have milestone logs. You can even throw an NDA in there, which an NDA is a non-disclosure agreement. There's a lot of different elements there, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but you need to become familiar with those types of words, that jargon, that lingo. The one thing that I can tell artists to learn more about is business, because at the end of the day, when you have companies like Condé Nast going off and saying, we're going to charge you a fee if you want to be a contractor with us and you want to get paid earlier than 120 days, that is an issue. That is when people are being predatory towards artists, and that is, not something that should be happening, but is happening because people aren't understanding contract law, or because they're undervaluing themselves and thus the community. So, thank you, Yogi, for bringing that up. That's very important.
That kind of ties into one of the topics that we said we'd go over is building a rocket ship out of a tin can. And the way I described that in the chat to everyone who's watching is basically talking about the skill sets that you have, knowing what you know, knowing what you don't know, knowing what skills you actually have that you don't even realize you have, and how to repurpose those for meeting your goals. Do you guys want to dive into that a little bit? And how it relates to everything that we've covered?
I just want to say one little thing.
Yeah.
I just want to say one little thing about before we move away from contracts, is that when I started slowly moving into publishing, that's when I started getting my feel for contracts, and I got screwed over by one job, and it wasn't for a book; it was for something else, but I didn't fully read through the contract, and basically it was like there was a section in it that was like, well, if we just decide to not use the work, we don't have to pay you. So basically they were saying at the last moment, if they just change their mind, they don't have to pay me, but it's still theirs. So they can then change their mind back and use it. Right. So I saw that, and I was just like, it's like getting kicked in the nuts for the first time. And I was like, holy crap. Okay. I really got to learn how this goes. Right. And so what I did is I just went through a couple of books. There's what is it called? Like the Illustrators Guild's, It's like a really popular book.
The graphic designers guide.
I don't know if they're still being published. Yeah, the Graphic Designers Guild. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So in there, that has a lot of great terminology in there. They've got a bunch of different contracts in there. So I had that, and I pulled that out and read through that section. But I found that actually, it's not. The biggest part is the language. It's like really like learning a foreign language.
Yeah.
It's English or it's in your native language.
Try.
But it's really it's a strange shift in your brain about understanding how the contract is talking. And really, just like any other language, the more you read it or the more you hear it, the more you understand it. So I was just downloading various contracts and reading through the language over and over and over and be like, what does that word exactly mean? Like, what is like perpetual rights mean? You know what I mean? Or you know, unlimited or unlimited perpetual rights or limited perpetual rights. There's so many different aspects, and you got to know what all of them are. So I would come across the words and I go look them up and so on and so on, and just familiarize yourself. Basically what I'm saying is familiarize yourself with the lingo that's in contracts by reading them more often. And not just reading the ones that come your way, right? Just going out online and reading them. I think that's the best way. And then if you've got someone close by who knows the stuff better than you, that's even more helpful.
Do you want this, Yogi, or me, whichever?
Well, just a couple of comments. You know, as far as resources go, almost every city has a law school in it, and almost every city has some form of free legal help. And you can either go to the students between first and second year, and they, you know, there's some sort of formalized way at the law school so that the students between their first and second year can be made available to you, or free legal work. You know, and then a lot of times there are nonprofit resources available, and they have some sort of legal help, and you know, different consortiums or you know, support organizations for artists. And so I get it that those of you that are digital natives might, you know, believe that you can solve all your problems by just Googling stuff on the internet, but I'm also a proponent of, look, I don't want to know everything, and I don't have time to know everything. And I don't, maybe as it was stated earlier, I think down in some of your opening comments, it's like, or maybe it was you, Justin, talking about, you know, the student or the young artist who just doesn't want to learn all this business crap, right? So maybe that works for you to kind of learn it and get familiar with it. And it's true, the more you see them, the more they become familiar. And I'm not belittling that part of it, but I also think for those of you that have absolutely no experience with this stuff, get some free advice. There's plenty of it out there. There are plenty of resources. And then over time, you'll stumble across a couple little things that are new and different and all that kind of stuff. But I would dissuade you or discourage you from trying to go it alone by just finding online resources, because I think there's a lot of really weird, tricky meta concepts or thoughts that go behind, even if you understand the words or the intent, that may have an impact on you or your work. And one point I would say, you know, this idea that you mentioned about this idea of they can change their mind at any moment and not use your work and not pay you. And if just by describing that, right, Justin, I mean, just by your describing that puts this feeling in my gut when I've done work on spec, hoping that they would buy it. And then when they don't buy it, I feel like crap because I put all this time and effort into it. But here's the thing that goes back to what I was talking about before, and that is, what are they really buying? It's not, I mean, what they're buying is like the tangible product that we agreed to, this image or this, you know, audio or time-based work. But really, it's all the thought that we put into it in order to then articulate the creative outcome. that is then manifested as some sort of piece of quote unquote art. And really, it's the thought that they're throwing away that has way more value than anything they could ever pay us.
Yeah.
And that's where we in our industry are so undervalued, because we can, if they say all of a sudden you're working on a project for billboards, right? All of a sudden they go, oh, instead we're going to do banner ads. You can pivot and adapt your creative concept for banner ads, or from banner ads to being a radio ad. I mean, you can do that as creatives, and that is what you're really selling, is what's going on in your brain,
Right.
and not the output. And so this whole idea of this transactional, I'm giving you money and you're giving us this thing, is really like, that's the least of what they're getting. And so this idea that they're throwing away your idea that you've delivered is more insulting and hurtful, because it's your brain, it's your creativity that they're actually rejecting. And that can be, for young artists, especially early mid-career people, really undermining to your self-esteem and your self-confidence.
Oh, sure.
So protecting yourself with those contracts, hugely important. I get it. I agree. Free resources available. And just going back to this meta concept of somebody having use for your visual work or your creative work in perpetuity, woo, that's a big deal. You would get no residuals? Really? Is that what you want? And that's tricky stuff. So talking to somebody to get the nuances of what that means and the potential impact of that, especially in a time when we have multiple platforms and we're doing integrated advertising all the time for our clients. They're using our products in an integrated way that could have, you might think, oh, it's one photo shoot, one afternoon. What do I care? It's $1,000 I'm getting paid. But, that might have legs that are going to go on for years, and you could be missing out on a lot of financial back end on that. So that's my high horse. Sorry, I went on a little bit there.
No, that's fine. No, I think you might have missed what, or maybe I didn't explain what had happened, was that they kept that stipulation in their contract that I missed, and then used it. They just, I guess, just saw an opportunity to use it, and so that they could get away with not compensating me and use the work, because it's theirs. Like, it's in their contract that if they choose to pull the plug, the rights don't go back to me. They keep the rights.
Exactly.
And that was the screwy part, was that they maintained the rights. They could use it as they pleased, and they didn't have to pay me.
And so, if you, at the time, if you had been utilizing the resources,
and then once I realized that, that's when I realized, oh, okay, I need to learn what's going on here with contracts.
One thing that I want to encourage everybody to understand is one word. It's interpretation. So the exact same line in legalese can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Make sure that you go to different people and utilize all the resources that Yogi recommended. Because online, you might not get the same help that you're getting from those same scholars who are literally going to school for this all day, every day, that are going to be able to help you understand and interpret it. And you want to have multiple interpretations so you can get a broader understanding of what the potential implications in all directions are. That's all I want to say.
Yeah. That's good stuff, guys. I think we should end in no more than 15 minutes. Is everyone on board with that? You can even just nod, thumbs up. Cool. Yeah, so with everything
Totally
that we just
agree
talked
with
about,
that.
we talked about contracts, we talked about the skill sets that we have, all of that stuff. And there's been a lot of anticipation about this rocket ship thing. It's been brought up a few times in the chat. So
rocket ship.
Yeah, the rocket ship. So we said that one of the topics we would cover is building a rocket ship out of a tin can. And I basically pitched it to the people that were tuning in, and for the new folks who are tuning in here as well. What we're actually talking about there is differentiating the skill set that you have, knowing what you know, knowing what you don't know, taking inventory of it all, and looking at how you can actually repurpose those things in ways that you don't even know that you can. And would you guys be willing to jump into that for a little bit in relation to, marketing yourself, building your brand, content, especially when it comes to content? There's a lot of artists out there that I've talked to almost on a daily basis who have no idea how to get started on anything, whether it's providing content, whether it's going freelance, whether anything like that. Not just the technique, right? Technique aside, we can talk about technique for months. But in terms of what do I need to do? Like, I like drawing pictures. What do I need to do to put myself out there? What do I need to do to promote myself? I don't know how to do anything. My job is XYZ during the day. I don't know how that's relevant. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Do you want me to jump in, or somebody else want to jump in
has
first?
something, yeah.
No, we can just do a quick round.
Yeah, let's do a quick round.
Okay.
Quick round, give our thoughts.
Okay. So Sal, as I've talked to you many times about content marketing.
Mm-hmm. Better call Saul.
My big thing is, what do you already? Go ahead.
I just said better call Saul.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So sorry, totally caught me off guard.
Okay.
Anyways, my big thing is, what are you already doing for free, and how can you flip that and monetize that in a non-monetary manner? Meaning, are you already doing art that's out there? Okay, cool. Well, how do you do that on a repeatable basis that's going to get people interested? Well, you could go off and make a really quick little comic that people find interesting. Suddenly that goes viral. An example of that is, there was an artist that went off, took a vacuum cleaner, or took two cats and a vacuum cleaner, and cats don't like vacuum cleaners, and suddenly this comic became, there's this tentacle, alien sci-fi monster vacuum cleaner going against two giant beastly war cats, and that little image, it's the depiction of what the cats see versus what we see, the reality.
Yeah.
That little image suddenly, boom, and started a career. You can literally start a career off of something goofy like that. So it's understanding content marketing. Arby's does this really well. They take all the goofy things that we love, and from Gurren Lagann and all the animes and all the cartoons that we watch and all the pop culture stuff, and they go off and they do these great things that are super cheap for them to do, and they make it relatable to us. So by going off and doing something that isn't going to cost you anything, because you're already doing it anyways, and then custom tailoring it, you're going to make people take notice of you. That's it. Content marketing is like 100 episodes unto itself, and it's something I could go really in depth in, but I don't want to, because that's not the point of this. The point is to put that word in your mind, and for you to start looking into it yourself. And if you have questions, you can always come to me and ask about them, because I'll teach content marketing all day long.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pass this off to y'all now. Y'all go ahead and.
Yeah, and what I'm talking about as well isn't just, terms of the art that you're making. I'm talking about the skill sets that you work with on a daily basis that you have no idea could actually apply to your artwork or apply to your expression as an artist and building your identity online. I think that's something that a lot of artists miss out on. I mean, hell, even myself, like I often grapple with the whole, do people actually like what I'm putting out there? Do people actually like what I do? Even things like, talking to people. People tell me, oh, you talk to people so easily. You should use that with your art. And I go, I have no idea what you're talking about. And here I am streaming and doing all of this stuff. It's a challenge. So that's one of the things I want to talk about is if someone works with spreadsheets all day, how do they apply that to their art? If they work with people all day, if say they're really good at cooking and they want to break into doing art, how do they repurpose a skill in cooking to making art, But yeah, it's totally in line with the content marketing. What Arby's is, I'm scrolling through the Arby's, I don't know for some of you guys who can see, I'm scrolling through the Arby's Twitter page, and yeah, I mean, the stuff they're doing is just ridiculous, but it's awesome and everybody loves it. It's a really good repurposing of geeky shit we all love, Anyway.
If you can turn a cup, an Arby's cup and a burger into a scene from an anime, I mean, that's impressive. That takes skill. I mean, it really is. And so I'm in awe on two levels. That's why I bring it up.
Yeah.
I think that making a rocket ship out of a tin can, that to me is about making the best thing that you possibly can out of what you have, right?
Yeah.
So some people will, I think, kind of what Sal was sort of pointing on. I think people will focus too much sometimes on the wrong thing. And you ever see that movie Blues Brothers, right? I think we all have probably seen Blues Brothers. And they go into it's like the Motown scene, and they're looking for some new instruments, and they walk into the music shop with Ray Charles, and the keyboardist, I forget who it was, he walks up and he's like kind of playing with the keys, and Ray's like, "Oh, you interested in that deck?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's all right, but it's kind of beat up. I don't know if I want to spend money on it." He's like, "Ah," he shoves him aside. He says, "Oh, let me see this. What are you talking about? This is a piece of junk." And then Ray Charles just rips it to shreds on that old keyboard. And then he's done with the song, and he's like, "It seems all right to me." and so, but see, the difference is that Ray knows where he's at, right? He knows who he is. He knows what he can do. He knows his limitations. He knows what to expect of himself, right? So I think kind of what you were saying, Sal, is I guess I brought up that story. Like, I think a lot of people are like, "Oh shit, I got to get the new Cintiq," or "How's the new iPad Pro?" And it's like, like, dude, that's like pro level shit that you should be worrying about years from now, right?
Yeah.
But I
Don't worry
like
about that
my
right
Cintiq.
now. Right,
like
but
my
it's not going to
Cintiq.
make your art or your career any better.
Right.
It's not going to help
give
you in the
someone who's
slightest.
starting out a Cintiq, a high-end computer, and like have him go to town with it, and then give someone
like
who's
my
been a
hand computer.
master like a Kim Jong-ji or someone like that a can of mustard and a toothpick. Who's going to create the better drawing? The obvious answer is Kim Jong-ji. I mean, yeah.
I'd love a mustard picture
I
by
would
Kim.
too.
That'd be awesome. But what I'm saying is yeah, you got to take stock. You got to kind of look at yourself objectively, and I think that's also a problem that a lot of artists have. They take themselves and their work way too personally. Like, this is me and mine, and I'm me out there, and this is the thing. And it's like, well, you kind of got to step back and separate yourself from what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve.
Right.
So I would say, just as like something tangible of what I'm talking about to do that would absolutely help make your tin can into a rocket ship is time management, right? That's one of my biggest my biggest proponents, and I think that's like one of the major keys to developing your rocket ship is time management. So I keep a schedule for myself, like right there in front of my laptop, that I look at, and it breaks down the days of the week and every hour of the day. Now, that could be insane to some people, but it's seriously like the only thing that has allowed me to develop.
Yeah.
And through that, it breaks down into other things. So one of the categories is client management. So through that breaks into my spreadsheets and how I handle my information through all my clients and my outreach. So I think I think time management is what I'm going to kind of push as being a major key into making your rocket ship.
Agreed. And I'm also talking about things like, say you're really good at a video game that requires a lot of inventory management. Like, I could see that being repurposed and applied to what you're describing, Justin, is tracking all your customers, tracking all your supplies, tracking, all of that stuff. There's people who are very obsessive about certain types of things, and they don't realize that they're skills, and I think that's Don just said something in the chat. He said, automate what you can, optimize wherever you can, maximize the time that you have. There are people who are really good at that when it comes to gaming, for example, or collecting or whatever, and they don't think about how that can be applied to the art that they say that they want to make. That's kind of like one of my big what do you call that? the things that you champion. Like I often tell people, like, look, you already have a bunch of skills that apply to art. You just don't know that you do. You guys have heard me rant about that before in Hangouts and stuff.
Something. Yes. One thing that I want to say is learn to do in 2 hours what you used to do in 8. If you can spend 2 hours doing it, you can charge 8 hours worth of time. You just made a lot of money.
Yeah.
And or you can charge 4 hours and you're not being greedy and you still make more money than you did at the 8-hour mark, because you're able to do 4 projects in that 2-hour block of time. Also take breaks in between your things. I maximize my schedule. I have it blocked out to every 30 minutes. Like from the time I'm awake to the time I go to sleep, I have everything optimized and maximized as much as possible because I am all about that. I do that down to like what I take in as food. Even I let my OCD actually be a benefit to that.
There you go.
So if you have OCD, reframe, flip that around, and that can actually work for you in a positive way.
Yogi, you have any tips in the way of repurposing?
Yogi, do you have a little making your rocket ship? Got tips of rocket ship building?
I guess for me, I'm echoing a theme that I've mentioned earlier, and that is really about don't get too wrapped up on the deliverables and really get into the whole creative and critical solution making. I think that is our secret powers. Those are our secret powers. And be curious, remain curious. Explore and find trusted confidants who you can fail safely with that will help you push through your barriers.
We have 2 minutes left on the stream. Really quick blitz really on failure. Anybody here? Each person just type in, or not type in, give an input a little bit very quickly on failure. Justin, you're unmuted. I'm just going to start with you.
Failure sucks, but you need it. Yeah, it hurts a lot, but so don't be afraid to fail. Like, don't be afraid to make. Like, I was chatting with Android Jones a long time ago, and he said, "Man, don't be afraid to make ugly art."
Yeah.
And so many that's an interesting thing because that's a pressure of social media.
Yeah.
Right. It pressures you into only showing great stuff, or you hear only show your best, and it's like, yeah, that's fine, but then you're afraid to make anything else but that.
Yeah.
So
all those likes and shares.
Yeah, I'd say definitely make ugly art, and you don't have to share it. Just do it.
One of the things whenever someone asks me,
I'll go ahead and go next.
Just really quick, Don. One of the first things I say in relation to what you said, Justin, is learn how to fail. And by learning how to fail, I don't mean just be willing to fail, but also learn how to be in the act of failure, in the space of failure. Like, learn how to take failure, learn how to stop and be objective about failure, to learn from it so that you can reapply. For example, I did this, me and I did this Fuck Goblins game on Kickstarter. It failed, but we learned a lot, and now we know a better way to do it for the next relaunch, and that wouldn't have happened if we had succeeded. So, sorry, Don, go ahead.
So I'm going to touch on 2 subjects: failure and depression. I'm a huge advocate of mental health because I was diagnosed with ADHD at 4 years old. I'm 29. That was a long time ago. And I have dealt with a myriad of health issues in that respect. And I think failure and depression can go hand in hand. Number one, accept that you're going to fail. And reframe what a failure is. Failure is a lesson learned of how not to do something. And that's just something you can throw out the door. Now you don't have to do it that way again. And instead you can try a different way. That lesson had to be learned so you can continue to figure out. For example, when people learned how to do perspective, they didn't know originally. They had to keep doing it without perspective. And then finally somebody learned, oh no, this is perspective. This means we can now see things in depth. They had to keep failing to finally get to that result. And when you're depressed and when you're battling, mental health, that monster gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you have panic attacks, you have anxiety, you have all kinds of nastiness that creeps up. But at the end of the day, you can use that to fuel you, because you can start making art that is directly reflective of your struggle. You can actually use that as a vehicle to market yourself. Even you can help other people understand what your struggle is. And some days you just have to accept the fact that you're going to be depressed, and you're just not going to be able to pull out the work that you need to. And on some projects, you are not going to be able to knock it out of the park. You're not going to have a 100% success rate every single time, and it's going to suck, and you're going to hate it. And you have to learn to accept that at some point. And it's taken me 29 years, and I still haven't fully accepted it. So, it just is. It takes time. Just learn to love yourself as much as, and once you love yourself, you start to love your art. Like, I left the games industry because I hated my art, because I got burnt out, and because I was working 7 days a week, I was working too much.
Just wasn't living.
And I hated it, and I failed at it. And I stopped arting for 2 years because of that.
Yeah.
So
and that's lost
you don't
progress.
want to hit burnout. You don't want to let failure rule you.
Yeah. Jen,
That's my point on it.
Jen, you have any input on failure or even like fear? I know is something that we've been talking about a lot lately.
Behind every masterpiece is a huge pile of crap. So you're going to fail a lot.
Yeah.
So get used to it. You're going to be making a lot of crap. And then one day, you'll get that one piece that just kind of pops out and goes, all of the elements of design have come together, and you've actually made something that's good. And then you go on to making another few piles of crap before you have another piece like that. It's a process, and pretty soon you learn to fail so fast that the nice pieces start to come along a little more frequently. But still, you're going to have those ups and downs, and they're going to be... you just kind of have to slog through them. Keep putting one foot in front of the other, and just don't stop. If you stop, you stop learning. That's my 2 cents.
Awesome. Yogi.
30 hours.
Yeah, I think it's I love what the conversation what people are offering. It's great. It's great. I think there's this difference between working on your personal work and working for others.
Yeah. And
when working for others, it's difficult when a client is paid $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 for something and it didn't turn out well, and it's hard to stand there and in that space, and that's tough. Meanwhile, it's our responsibility to, again, the way that I think about it is that the failure, to me, creativity comes from a response to the world as I'm experiencing it. And the failure, so to speak, is my inability to manifest what that feeling is that's inside of me externally in a way that leads somebody to at least understand what I'm going through and optimally have some glimmer of what I was feeling and I tried to manifest. So that's on the personal work. With the professional work, it tends to be obviously less sort of internally focused, but I use those skills in order to, I tap those skills when I'm doing professional work that I've learned and honed doing personal work.
Awesome.
So, but yeah, I mean, failure, it's, and then it's a question of, if it's personal work, I never consider it failure. I just consider it part of the process. If it's professional work, it just sucks that you missed it, Yeah. And that just is hard to stand there and look them in the face and say, you still got to write me that check.
Oh,
and we missed the mark.
Yeah.
That's tough.
That is very tough. Yeah. Solange, any closing things, statements on failure? Is Solange there? Oh, there she is.
Yeah, I'm there. Statements on failure. Sometimes it can bring you down, and you're kind of losing yourself when you fail something. But it's always important to know and remember there's people around you to support you. Like the last semester I did in university, I was all over the place and totally overwhelmed by whatever was happening. I was having a hard time working on a project, and what made it better, what made my semester better was the fact that I had a teacher that was really there for me, that was listening and caring. So it's always important to remember you're not alone. There's people around you that can help, that can offer a kind here. Yeah,
Awesome.
that's what I have to say about failure.
So there you go, guys.
Surround yourself by supportive people. Always help.
And surround yourself with people who are better than you. Do not be the best person in the room, so that you can really feel those failures, but have those
That's
really
not what I'm
big
saying.
growth spurts. Yeah.
What?
Cool.
So
Yeah,
Sal,
the importance is not to compare yourself with them, it's to take them as a mentor.
Yes. Yes.
Could
very
I say
good
one
point.
last thing that actually reminded me of something that my father taught me? So one thing that I will tell you is, if you become a manager of artists, of art, of anything really, don't be afraid of hiring people who are smarter than you, and don't be afraid of hiring people that are better than you. Why? Because they're going to make you look good, number one, and number two, they're going to make your organization look good. And don't be afraid if they make more money than you. Don't let that ego rule you, because at the end of the day, you could destroy an entire organization because you're too worried about the fact that somebody under you, and I'm saying that in quotations, someone you're managing is a better, or leading is actually the best word to use, is making more than you. Quite frankly, they may actually have more qualifications than you, and thus truly really deserve that pay, and therefore why do you have a problem with that? So don't be afraid of people making more than you, even if they're not at the same tier level as you. So just a friendly word of advice.
Awesome. Thank you, Don.
Cool.
All right, you guys. Well, this
That was
was
a
a
good wrap
really
up.
good stream. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. The guests that we have here, if you can you please let people know where they can find you? Let's just kind of go in a quick circle here. Yogi, do you want to be found online? Is there something that you want to plug for yourself as a way to get seen, heard, etc.?
Maybe if
Yeah,
somebody
I'm
has a
again,
question for you.
I'm the director of entrepreneurial studies at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, so you can reach me there, sroof@mcad.edu. And Sal, you can put that up somewhere on Facebook or whatever.
Cool.
s.roof@mcad.edu. Okay, I'll make sure to capture that on the Facebook group as
Just
well.
sroof@mcad.
Oh, there's no dot. Okay, sorry about that. I know I've got it in my email. I just want to make sure I type it in here, even just as a reminder for myself.
Yeah, no worries.
Don, how can people find you?
So I have pandamoonpub.com, or NYANCEPT.com. My personal company is NYANCEPT. That's my personal brand, which is pretty much cats everything. So that would be support@NYANCEPT.com, and that's NYANCEPT.com. And I can provide that in the Twitch channel as well. Or you can, the easiest way to get a question to me and guarantee it's going to get answered is connect with me on Facebook, and that's Don Kramer, and you'll just connect with me there. And I love to talk marketing. I love to talk all this. And I offer a lot of free advice on this simply because I love the exchange of knowledge.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
Justin, how do people find you?
Cool. My website or the complaint department?
Yeah, Justin, that's
Well,
the face of our
mail
complaint
goes
department,
to
guys.
Justin.Adam.
So whenever I say
Studios.com.
Yeah. Yeah, if there's any hate mail, just send it to me.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think most people watching this already know who I am
There's
through
actually
Anvil.
quite a few
So
people who we're not connected to, so you should do the thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. That's cool. My website is variastudios.com. That's V as in Victor. And yeah, I can be found through there or Facebook or whatever.
Perfect.
No big deal.
Jen, how do people find you?
Well, normally I float around in cyberspace all day. But no, I can be found on Facebook. And I've got an art station up. Just look for Works of Genius. Jenius. And I'll be setting up a Twitch channel soon, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah. And Solange, how do people find you?
Facebook mainly. I do not yet have a personal webpage or anything, so just don't be confused because I have both a personal account and a more of an art page account. But just type my name, I suppose, and you'll find both page with the same goddamn picture.
Perfect. And as usual, thanks for tuning in for this event and on my stream here, guys. If feedback is great and people want to see more of this, we are talking about doing this as a monthly event, covering various topics and subjects, etc. So please let us know what you thought about the stream on the event. Send us messages on Twitch here, on Facebook. If you have hate mail about tonight's stream, please send that to Justin Adams at variastudios.inc.com. As usual, I'm the Dark Cloak. You can find me at thedarkcloak.com, aka Sal. That's me. Yes, so now you have a face for our complaint department, and it's that face in the bottom right-hand corner. So be sure you keep that in mind. Yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you so much for all our guests, our co-hosts. Make sure you guys look up the Anvil on Facebook. We are all about improvement of craft, technique, and professionalism of mind, just the same. This has been Marketing Strategies for Artists. Thank you for tuning in, you guys. Have a good night. Oh, wait.
Okay.
All right, everybody wave bye. Hold on.
Yay!
You guys can wave bye now. You guys caught me off guard with that. Good night.